On your feet,
Jim.
you're not done yet. In case you've forgotten, you have your own reasons for coming. You had
A lot of first-person shooters. What happened?
think of your
IPs.
Of
Killzone.
of
Resistance.
After all, this whole ugly story started with you.
Alright, Phil. Alright, Jim. I'm pretty sick of this by now. Just kiss already, come on.
Yeah, you'd like that, faggot. Sorry.
This has been like the Hillary versus Trump of video games. This news alone has helped build channels. This topic has been hot for so long that even covering Jim Ryan's text messages on the toilet is newsworthy. I could be making a lot of videos on this covering it, but whatever it is that I have to say on the matter has already been said by Destin in at least 100 different videos. So I told myself I wouldn't talk about it until it actually started getting interesting again. And luckily for me, that's exactly what happened. It's getting close to a full year that I've heard the ponies non-stop say to themselves, Sony ain't scared, Sony ain't sweating, this is a big old nothing burger, it don't mean nothing, to Sony has every right to be scared, this is a big deal. We can't take it lightly. After years of being told Sony has Uncharted, Sony has God of War, Sony has Horizon, Sony has The Last of Us. Who would have ever thought that all along losing Call of Duty means all of that is irrelevant? No, it's not the PlayStation fanboys making that argument. It's Sony themselves. This would in turn also reduce the potential return on producing innovative first-party games, thereby diminishing Sony Interactive Entertainment's ability and incentive to invest in new games.
My source is that I made it the f up.
Oh, don't worry, you're not King Thrash, you read that right. You seriously mean to tell us, Sony, that the majority of the funding for your first-party titles comes from Call of Duty? Are you kidding? Really? If the majority of funding coming from those games isn't coming from the games themselves? We got a bigger problem on our hands, don't we? If you can't make those first-party titles without Call of Duty sales, then why the f are you making them? If they're not popular enough to be funded on their own, then pull back the budget. You can't seriously be trying to convince the CMA that the majority of your company's success is from Call of Duty. And I thought Microsoft was doing a terrible job for their case. But Sony? Holy shit. But more importantly, what's that supposed to tell your consumers, Sony? Hey, if we don't get COD, we probably won't be able to make these big budget AAA third-person action-adventure games with stealth elements. If that's the case, I highly suggest we get an investigation done and follow that paper trail, because who knows what Sony is doing with the money they make off their first-party games. If they can't put that money back into those IPs, then something is wrong with Sony's budgeting. It's absolutely pathetic to see Sony like this. This isn't the Sony I once knew. The Sony I used to know would be like, go ahead, Microsoft, bring it. We're gonna let our games do the talking. We're gonna build our own IPs. What happened to that Sony? With the massive lead they've had over Xbox for about a decade now, it seems kind of hard to believe Call of Duty is the deal breaker, especially considering the fact that Microsoft has offered 10 years for Call of Duty to stay on PlayStation. They've even offered to allow Sony to put COD on PS Plus. So you'd figure what the hell is wrong with this company? That was until Jim Ryan let out his true intentions. Meserve quoted Jim Ryan's words that was said during the behind closed doors hearing with the European Union regulators, the European Commission on February 21st, which explains why Sony hasn't agreed to any deals. I don't want a new Call of Duty deal, Ryan reportedly said. I just want to block your merger.
It's not about Call of Duty. It's about sending a message.
Like, what else is there to say? I don't know how the CMA is looking at Jim Ryan and simply not discrediting every single argument he's brought to the table. Because Sony didn't come to the table with logical arguments, they came to the table with moral arguments. Oh, if Microsoft does this, it could hurt gamers. It'll hurt the industry. They'll make COD a worse experience for people. Gaming will get more expensive. Sony was acting all altruistic about it. Yet when it comes time to work out an agreement on something, they become a petulant child. Nah, I don't want a deal. I just don't want you to own Call of Duty. Bleh. This means Sony will go at any length to stop Microsoft from owning COD. They don't care. This isn't a company you can sit down and negotiate with, CMA. And by the way, I don't know why you even sat down to negotiate with them and hear them out. Your job is to look out for consumers, not the corporations. Instead of hearing the millions upon millions of consumers of video games, you're listening to big billion-dollar Sony, who's trying to make it seem like they're looking out for consumers. Yeah, no, that's the CMA's job. Sony is there for one thing and one thing only: themselves. Any moral argument they've made up to this point is complete bullshit. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that. I'm confident most of you out there are smart enough to pick up on it. Unfortunately, some of those smart people include those that argue in favor of Sony, knowing all of this, which makes them even worse than the dumb people. Now they want to argue that Sony is in the right to stop this merger.
I'm gonna help you out because everybody gets off in left field on this.
Oh, would you look at that? Charlie Day finally opened up his own gaming channel. This is Reforge Gaming. And right off the bat, I just want to let everybody know this guy still thinks there's a chance Starfield will be coming to the PlayStation.
Starfield arrives exclusively on Xbox Series X, S, and PC on September the 6th, 2023. Arrives exclusively is such a strange way of putting it.
I went to Google.
And I had a really hard time finding any press announcements, any trailers that say this, except for two. This is something that I do think could happen. Starfield as a timed exclusive.
I'm not crazy.
I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. There are breadcrumbs here, and I think they lead to a tasty meal. What do you think?
You want to talk about stress? You want to talk about stress? Okay? I've stumbled onto a major company conspiracy, Mac. How about that for stress?
Well, just because you didn't wear a tinfoil hat doesn't mean I wasn't gonna edit one on you. Come on. At the very least, the spirit of Alex Jones lives on in you. Honestly, that entire video is one big-ass project to dissect. Some say conspiracy theories are a way for people to cope with reality. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think the man legitimately believes what he's saying. The way his eyes light up when he thinks his brain is doing good work, you can tell he's convinced by what he's saying. And if he believes enough in what he's saying, then the ponies will believe in him too.
Kudos to this dude, cause I'm not putting the energy in YouTube to explain all this, man. Mostly due to the fact it doesn't really matter, Holmes. Too many are emotionally invested, so they don't see how ridiculous they look. Great stuff from Reforge Gaming! Sony are legally bound to maintain their winning position. Microsoft are legally bound to attain said winning position. The sooner we realize there is no protagonist or antagonist in this, the sooner we can get back to just gaming.
What do they mean the sooner we can get back to just gaming? You can go just game if you want. Nobody's forcing you to participate in this discussion. Once people no longer have this to talk about, do you really think they're gonna move on to just gaming?
I don't understand how some people can't understand this. But like the guy says here, it's because they get emotional. A lot of people I know need to watch this. Wanting Sony to fall in with Microsoft's request is simply illogical, and the frustration against Jim Ryan is exaggerated. Preach! Gamers, get your business acumen up! Please, you sound silly as explained here!
I mean, I don't know what to say. Everyone's pointing to this guy as the logical voice of reason. I guess he spits some facts. He doesn't involve his emotions like stupid gamers on the internet. The guy making conspiracy theories, living in denial, hoping Starfield comes to PlayStation. He's not the emotionally invested gamer. Okay, all right. Well, let's listen to him.
If Burger King was trying to buy Coca Cola, and they were going to give McDonald's a contract that would let McDonald's keep Coca-Cola in their store, in their restaurants, but it was a worse deal than McDonald's has right now, they have every right to reject the offer and also try to block the acquisition. Why? Because Coca-Cola is endemic to the revenue streams of McDonald's, and their competitor buying Coca-Cola could irreparably harm them.
Food analogy! Is this your king, everyone? Yes, of course, because purchasing video game intellectual properties is the exact same thing as buying food products. In what world, by the way, would Burger King ever have the money to even try to buy Coke? Not even McDonald's can afford to buy Coke. Either way, the soda sold inside of a restaurant is not the same type of consumable object as a video game. I shouldn't be the one having to tell you this, but I'm pretty sure it's obvious to everyone, right? And that is why I said you can't do this type of comparison, because it's retarded. If Burger King truly purchased Coca Cola, which they could never do, and made it so you could solely only get Coke at Burger King restaurants, that would be a far, far, far bigger deal to the world than this ABK deal. You do realize that, right? You can't just draw a far worse comparison to make your point. If Burger King really does that in your hypothetical world, far more than just McDonald's would be speaking out. Every single major food distributor, every single major restaurant, every single vending machine company would attempt to block a merger on that scale. Do you see that happening with the ABK deal? Do you? No, you don't. Only one major gaming company has spoken out. Sony. Nintendo? They don't care. Valve? They don't care. 6 other publishers, they say, okay, yeah, let's do it. It may actually encourage some competition. See, that's the problem with hypotheticals. Why do we need them when we got real world events instead? Why do we also need to exaggerate the scale of this merger? It's not the equivalent of what you just said. But most importantly, both Burger King and McDonald's don't solely rely on Coca Cola for revenue. Just like Sony, God is not their only source of revenue.
So Microsoft trying to buy Call of Duty and Sony saying, listen, we got a great thing going with Call of Duty right now. We don't want this to happen. Oh, well, we'll give you this deal. I don't want your deal. I've got a great deal right now.
The f*** you reading off a script? You need a script? This man needs a script. My God, and I thought all of this gold you were coming up with was on the spot, but no, you had a script. You were prepared. You wrote down your arguments. Oh God, you're not making Sony sound reasonable. You're making Sony sound like a petulant child. Microsoft didn't even have to give them a deal in the first place. Sony doesn't even have the position nor the power to dictate what Microsoft can and can't buy. They aren't even losing access to Call of Duty through this deal. The only thing they're going to lose is the status quo, which you are arguing for. And again, it's not about Sony, it's about the consumers. This is an argument with the CMA. Sony is arguing in favor of themselves. They don't want to be hurt by it. And if that means people being able to play Call of Duty on Game Pass, something beneficial to consumers, must be stopped in order for Sony to hold their position, then they will do it. I don't know why anybody is arguing in favor of Sony doing such a thing.
The whole mentality and the whole narrative of
they're scared,
or they're mad, or they're angry, or they're crying, you're projecting emotion onto a multi-billion-dollar corporation who is legally obligated to protect its revenue streams, and that's all they're doing. Your inability to see that is your own fault.
Ah, does someone not like people making fun of Sony? Somebody doesn't like being reminded that Sony is big mads, big sads, and big scareds. I'm sorry, but we use that type of language because it's funny. It's meme-worthy. Is Jim Ryan really locking himself in the closet and crying and being mad and throwing a tantrum? Probably, but we'll never know. Leave the big billion-dollar corporation alone. They're not mad. They're not crying. They're not scared. You're the one projecting that onto them. You know, it's funny because he actually thinks Sony is legally obligated to do this. Why? Because he's still of the belief that companies are legally obligated to maximize profits, which isn't true. Sony isn't doing this because they have no choice. They aren't victims of their own success. That's retarded. They're simply protecting their position in the market as number one. And they do it at the expense of consumers that aren't theirs. Yeah, I know Sony is screwing you over Xbox and PC users quite often, but you gotta understand, they're doing it to protect their revenue share. That's all they're doing. I'm sorry, but you can't make it seem like an innocent thing. This is some grade A bootlicking. This man is giving Sony every single excuse he can, and none of them are good.
They're literally doing what they're legally obligated to do. And you can't see that because it's personal. They're mad. They're angry. Why are you talking in personal language like Sony's some petulant child that walked into the room?
Why are are you personally defending them so hard like it's hurting them? Have you never worked a job in your life? Have you never been under stress? Have you never been upset by the tasks you were handed? Because that's what a lot of the people working for Sony are feeling, so yes, they are big mads. This merger has upset the company. If they weren't upset about it, they wouldn't be doing anything right now. The only ones who have actually made this entire merger personal is Sony. My God, this is just to make PlayStation fanboys feel better about themselves.
They're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Jim Ryan has a legal obligation to do what he is doing. That's what he's required to do it. If he fails to protect the revenue streams and the profit margins of Sony, he could be fired.
Oh no! What happened? Oh no! How terrible! That's just awful. How terrible. Oh no.
Microsoft acquiring Call of Duty will not get Jim Ryan fired. Stop, okay? Just stop. You really think the guy that has maintained Sony in the #1 position for as long as he has is going to be fired? I get your whole point is to make people see the bigger picture of things here, and that's being that Sony is a corporation who at the end of the day will do what they must do. But that doesn't mean people just have to sit there and not in agreement with it. Chevron will raise gas prices because, well, that's just what they have to do. You know how companies are. Don't take it personal. Does that mean I'm okay with it? No. If you're expecting me to sympathize with a billion-dollar corporation, you're out of your mind. I don't care if this is what Jim Ryan has to do because it's his job. He's choosing to still work that job. This mental midget thinks he's pointing it out in the most logical, sensible way, when all he's really doing is just justifying it and damage controlling as much as possible. All the ponies flocked to this dude as if he was some sort of sage, but all I saw was every single PlayStation fanboy Twitter argument manifested in the form of a video. Honestly, can we just get this merger over with already? Because the longer we delay it, the more stupid people get. Next thing you know, they're gonna start comparing the ketchup and mustard on a dining table to console exclusives. Holy shit. Oh my, no, I don't. Look, we're on the road to 60,000 subs, so just hit subscribe and I'll see you later.
Phil's a faggot, Phil's fat, Phil's a loser, Phil's a loser, Phil's a faggot, Phil's fat, Phil's a loser, Phil's a loser. I just can't do it. I just can't